June 1942. The Siege of Sevastopol. The air is 90 degrees. It smells like dust, cordite, and death. A German sniper, one of the best from the Berlin school, has been in this rubble pile for 12 hours. He hasn't moved. His target is somewhere in the ruins of the building 300 meters away. He's hunting a ghost, a phantom the Soviets call Lady Death. He is the hunter. He is confident. He is wrong. He scans the dark windows, nothing. He waits. A flicker of movement, a shadow. He raises his rifle, his high-tech Zeiss scope glinting. He sees it, the top of a head. He exhales, his finger tightens on the trigger. The German sniper slumps over. He is dead. The movement he saw was a piece of cloth tied to a stick, slowly raised by an unseen hand. The shot didn't come from the window. It came from a pile of rubble to his left, 200 meters away. The hunter had been the one hunted all along. What the German High Command couldn't accept, what his superiors back in Berlin refused to believe, was that this ghost was not an elite male commando. The deadliest sniper terrorizing their lines was a 25-year-old woman, a history student who had been working in a weapons factory, a tomboy, as she called herself, barely 25 years old, a woman who had just used a simple rabbit hunting trick to kill one of their most decorated soldiers. This is the story of Lyudmila Pavlichenko, and this is how her simple pre-war skill for hunting small game made her the deadliest female sniper in human history. To understand how one woman could kill 309 men, you first have to understand the war she was fighting. June 22nd, 1941, Operation Barbarossa. Adolf Hitler launches the largest land invasion in human history. 3 million German soldiers pour over the Soviet border. The Red Army isn't just unprepared, it's decapitated, thanks to Stalin's purges. The Wehrmacht is a modern, professional, technologically superior force. The Soviets are in a state of total collapse. In the city of Kiev, a 24-year-old history student named Lyudmila Belova is working at the local arsenal weapons factory as a grinder. She's ambitious, she's a tomboy, she's fiercely competitive, and she has a secret. Ever since she was 14, she had joined the OSOAVIAKHIM, a civilian shooting club. While other girls were learning to type, Lyudmila was earning her Voroshilov sharpshooter badge. She wasn't just a good shot, she was a marksman. When the news of the invasion hits, she walks straight to the Odessa recruiting office. The recruiter looks at her. He sees a student, not a soldier. He laughs. "You should be a nurse," he says. Lyudmila doesn't blink. She refuses. She insists on joining the infantry. The recruiter, desperate for anyone, finally relents but remains skeptical. To prove her worth, a unit hands her a rifle and points to 2 Romanian soldiers, collaborators, working 400 meters away. She doesn't hesitate. 2 shots, 2 kills. She is accepted into the Red Army's 25th Chapayev Rifle Division on the spot. Lyudmila would never count those first 2 men in her official tally. She called them test shots. The Germans had made a critical mistake. They looked at the Red Army and saw only numbers. They looked at Soviet society and saw only inferior people. They did not account for the Soviet Union's desperation. The Red Army was the first modern army to officially deploy women as frontline snipers, over 2,000 of them. The Germans and even the Americans and British found this unthinkable. It was a failure of imagination, and they definitely didn't account for Lyudmila's sisu. She wasn't Finnish, but she had that same grit. She was a factory worker who understood machines. She was a history student who understood conflict. But most of all, she was a hunter. When Lyudmila was issued her rifle, it was the standard issue Mosin-Nagant, but she quickly upgraded. She chose the Tokarev SVT-40. This was her first hack. The Mosin was a bolt action, reliable, accurate, the rifle of a marksman. But the SVT-40 was semi-automatic. To the old guard snipers, this was heresy. A semi-auto rifle is less reliable, its mechanism can jam, and it's less accurate at extreme distances. But Lyudmila wasn't Simo Heiha, waiting in the snow for a single perfect shot. She was fighting in the urban rubble of Odessa and Sevastopol. Her hack wasn't patience, it was speed. She knew that in a sniper duel, the first shot reveals your position. The SVT-40 allowed her to fire a second, third or fourth shot before the German sniper could even chamber his next round. She was trading pinpoint accuracy for lethal, overwhelming speed. But her rifle was only half the trick. The other half was her brain. Lyudmila's real genius was deception. She had learned it hunting rabbits, and she perfected it hunting men. The German snipers were trained to look for three things: movement, muzzle flash, and the glint of a scope. Lyudmila systematically denied them all. The decoys. Just like in the opening, she built mannequins. She would prop up a helmet on a stick or a piece of uniform and wait. The instant a German sniper took the bait, she would fire, not at the decoy, but at the sniper. The distractions. The research file is incredible. She would tie strips of cloth to nearby trees. The wind would make them flutter, constantly drawing the eye of the enemy spotter, fatiguing them, making them see movement everywhere. The fake fall. In one instance, a German sniper grazed her while she was climbing a tree for a better view. She didn't panic. She didn't fire back. She intentionally let herself fall 12 feet to the ground. She then lay perfectly still, playing dead, for hours. The German sniper, convinced he had his kill, moved on. Lyudmila waited until nightfall and simply crawled away. Think about this. An enemy sniper is scanning the horizon. He's looking for a man. He's looking for a soldier. He's looking for one target. But Lyudmila is a ghost. She is two decoys, three fluttering pieces of cloth, and a semi-automatic rifle, all waiting for him to make one move too many. And now she went to work. Her first 75 days during the brutal siege of Odessa, her tally was astronomical. By October 1941, she had 187 confirmed kills. That's an average of 2.5 kills per day. This wasn't war. This was an extermination. She was promoted to senior sergeant. She was no longer just a history student. She was a hero of the Soviet Union. And it was in Odessa that the war became personal. She married a fellow sniper, Alexei Kitsenko. They were a team. They hunted together. As Lyudmila later said, the honeymoon had a positive effect on my shooting. But in March 1942, during the siege of Sevastopol, Alexei was mortally wounded by a mortar shell. He died in her arms. From that moment on, the hunt was no longer for her country. It was for revenge. The front line at Sevastopol was a meat grinder, and the Germans were now terrified of the ghost in the rubble. Her name was known. The reports of Lady Death went all the way up to the German High Command. They could not tolerate this. They stopped sending regular soldiers. They started sending their best. This is the moment the story pivots. Lyudmila became target number one. German loudspeakers blared across no man's land. They called her the Russian bitch from hell. They tried to bribe her, offering her chocolate and a commission in the German army. When that failed, they threatened her. Lyudmila, we will find you. We will tear you into 309 pieces. When she heard this, Lyudmila wasn't scared. She was proud. In her memoirs, she wrote with satisfaction, "They even knew my score." The Germans began organizing specific counter-sniper missions. They sent their best hunters from Berlin and Munich. Lyudmila hunted them, one by one. This wasn't just combat anymore. This was a duel, a personal battle between her and the entire German sniper corps. Her official record includes 36 confirmed sniper kills, 36 duels against the enemy's best. She won every single one. One duel became legend, a 3-day battle of wills. For 3 straight days, she and an elite German sniper hunted each other. They lay in the same sector of rubble, unmoving. They endured the heat, the flies, the thirst, the rats. No decoys, no tricks, just 2 perfect marksmen waiting for the other to make a mistake. On the 3rd day, the German sniper, convinced she was gone, made one move too many. When she finally retrieved his body, she found his logbook. He was an officer, and he was credited with over 400 kills. Lyudmila Pavlichenko had just killed one of the deadliest snipers in the German army. By June 1942, her tally stood at 309. She had been wounded 4 times, but always returned to the front. But the siege of Sevastopol was a lost cause. The city was pulverized. Lyudmila was fighting non-stop. Her husband was dead, and she was exhausted. And then luck ran out. It wasn't a bullet, it wasn't a sniper, it was a random mortar shell. Shrapnel from the explosion hit her directly in the face. The injury was catastrophic. She was knocked unconscious, bleeding out in the rubble. When her comrades found her, they knew the battle was over. The Soviet High Command knew it too. They could not lose their greatest living hero. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, the Lady Death, was too valuable to lose. She was evacuated from Sevastopol by a Soviet submarine, one of the last to leave the fallen city. Her war at the front was over, but her second war was just beginning. Stalin now had a problem. He had a 25-year-old battle-hardened hero covered in medals who was now too valuable to risk in combat. So, he gave her a new mission. In late 1942, Lyudmila was sent on a propaganda tour to the United States, Canada, and Great Britain. Her mission? Convince the Allies to open a second front and relieve the pressure on the Red Army. She was the first Soviet citizen to be received by a US president at the White House. But the American press didn't know what to do with her. They didn't see a soldier. They saw a girl sniper. Reporters asked her absurd, sexist questions. Do you use makeup on the front line? Does your uniform make you look fat? One reporter criticized the length of her skirt. Lyudmila, a woman who had dueled 36 snipers and watched her husband die, was furious. She told one reporter, "I am proud to wear the uniform of the Red Army. It was sanctified by the blood of my comrades." But she saved her true firepower for a speech in Chicago. She stood before a massive crowd. She was tired of the silly questions. She was tired of the diplomatic niceties. She decided to speak from the heart. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice cold and clear, "I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 fascist invaders by now. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" The crowd erupted. She had shamed them. She had done what no politician could. The folk singer Woody Guthrie was so inspired he wrote a song about her, Miss Pavlichenko. This was her ripple effect. She wasn't just a sniper, she was a psychological weapon, one that helped turn the tide of public opinion and pressure the Allies into action. What happens to the deadliest woman in the world when the war is over? She didn't write a best-selling book. She didn't go on a victory tour. She did what the history student in her always knew how to do. She went home. She returned to Kiev University and finished her master's degree in history. She became a historian working for the Soviet Navy. But she was haunted. The research files show she suffered from years of PTSD, depression, and alcoholism, grappling with the ghost of her husband Alexei and the 309 men she had killed. But her story has one final, beautiful chapter. The woman who had arranged her 1942 American tour was First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. The two women, the American aristocrat and the Soviet sniper, had formed an unlikely, deep friendship. They corresponded for years. Then, in 1957, at the height of the Cold War, Eleanor Roosevelt visited Moscow. A Soviet government minders tried to keep her on a strict schedule, but Eleanor insisted she would not leave without seeing her friend. Eleanor was taken to Lyudmila's small two-room apartment. The Soviet minders stood in the doorway, watching, listening. The two women were formal, cold. Lyudmila, the history student turned historian, made an excuse. She pulled Eleanor into the bedroom to show her something and closed the door. Away from the prying eyes of the state, the two old friends, Lady Death and the First Lady of the World, fell into each other's arms, half laughing, half crying, catching up on 15 years in whispers. Lyudmila Pavlichenko died in 1974 at the age of 58. She remains to this day the most successful female sniper in history. Her story is not just about the numbers. It's not just about the 309 kills. It's about the will of a 14-year-old girl who refused to be told she couldn't shoot as well as the boys. It's about the grit of a 24-year-old student who refused to be a nurse. And it's about the profound human cost of a war that turns rabbit hunters into legends.